Hari Om. We start with a prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanora Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pitatvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhatvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi 8th chapter now, and it deals with the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So Chaitanyam is a Deepam, Kutastha Deepa, Chaitanya Deepa Prakaranam. Here we are now analyzing how perception occurs, how knowledge occurs, and what exactly involved in terms of the mind and the consciousness. When I say I am conscious entity and I am conscious of this object, so knowledge of the object is nothing but being conscious of the presence of the object. And before the knowledge comes, I have only ignorance of the object, ignorance of the presence of the object. so that means I do not know the object is, its existence is not there, or I don't know, or I don't see it. So now when I am perceiving the object, and the perception occurs through the process where the mind along with the senses grasping the object, and a thought forms, a vritti which is called thought forms in the mind, and the formation of the vritti is being illumined by the light of consciousness, and that illumination occurs by the reflection, because thought being subtle reflects the consciousness, and therefore a knowledge of the thought arises by the reflection process, and that's called Chidabhasa. Along with the reflection of the thought, that will give me this is a pot, this is a chair, this is a table. So every time a vritti, a thought of the object arises, it's being beamed as though by the Kutastha Chaitanya, which is always there, and when it beams, it gets reflected, and the reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa, is what is being the knowledge of the thought. And the knowledge of the thought is, this is a pot, that is a knowledge, this is a chair. So along with that thought, spontaneously, without forming a vritti, in the mind arises a knowership. A knowership is called, I know this is a pot, I know this is a chair. So I know means I am a knower, and therefore it is an ownership that I am a knower, and that knowership also arises in the mind by what? That I am conscious that I know this is a pot, I know this is a chair. So that arises spontaneously without forming a vritti, and that being illumined as though by the Kutastha Chaitanyam or Brahma Chaitanyam. So the knowership is being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Known is being illumined by the reflected consciousness. So suppose there are no thoughts, then I have only the pure mind that is being illumined by consciousness, that is Kutastha Chaitanyam. Only I knower, but with knower itself is knower with respect to what? So normally when you say I am a knower, knower of what? When you say I am a knower of this, that. This is again a vritti of an object, but therefore without an object can I be a knower? That we have to analyze a little bit carefully. But here we will chant the mantra 6, and this is being illustrated in terms of the role of the reflected consciousness Chidabhasa and Brahma Chaitanya in the background in terms of the presence or absence of the knowledge of an object, taking Ghata as an example. So now we'll chant the mantras, the sloka 6. Chidabhasanta dhivrittihi, Chidabhasanta dhivrittihi, Jnanam loham takuntavat, Jnanam lohanta kuntavat jajyam ajnanametabhyam vyaptah kumbho dvidochyute together chidabhasanta dhivrittihi jnanam lohanta kuntavat jajyam ajnanametabhyam vyaptah kumbho dvidochyute. So chidabhasanta dhivrittihi chida abhasadhi vrittihi. So absence of the thought and the knowledge of the absence of the thought. This is essentially the knowledge of the absence of the thought is also jnanam, is also knowledge, is also jnanam. This is lohanta kuntavatu, like the lohantam, like the loham is the iron, and kuntavat is the wooden arrow becomes which is inert. Arrow becomes sharp when you put in the end the metallic iron point head on top of it. Then it becomes an arrow. Otherwise, it's just a wood piece. So wood piece becomes an arrow, transforms into an arrow by having on top of it the superimposed something that is essentially an arrow made up of a metal. This is an example here for how the knowledge of the vritti takes place. The vritti is by itself is inert, buddhi is inert. Vritti is also a thought. Thought is only subtle matter, and therefore it is also inert. It comes and goes. When they have one vritti and another vritti, the thought keeps on going. So what exactly thought? You go and ask or Google, you have all sorts of explanations, but thought is a vritti which is a modification of the mind. We'll analyze more, and it's going to Vidyaranya is going to present more about vrittis. But here, by a wood piece doesn't become an arrow; it becomes only a stick. It becomes an arrow only when you put on top of it the loham. So lohantam, in the end, you put the iron arrow-shaped iron piercing. That's the one that makes that wood rod into an arrow. So chidabhasanta dhivritti jnanam lohanta kuntavatu, just like the iron piece makes that into an arrow. Jadyam ajnanametabhyam. So ajnanam is jadyam. Ajnanam is called inertness. Is jnanam ajnanam etabhyam vyaptaha kumbho dvidochyute. So how do you say absence of the pot, knowledge of the absence of the pot and knowledge of the presence of the pot. We are here looking. So chidabhasanta dhivrittihi, knowledge of the absence of the pot is also a jnanam. And lohanta kuntavatu, like putting an arrow, putting a stick, this capped with iron, it's called an arrow. Jadyam, inertness. Ajnanam is called inertness. Ajnanam is we call darkness, and inertness is all associated with because inert things cannot have knowledge. So it is also ajnanam. Yetabhyam, by these two, vyaptaha kumbhaha, part conditioned by dvida uchyate, the two ways is required. So thought of an object bathing in the light of chidabhasa is knowledge of the object, just as wooden stick at the iron cap is called an arrow. And when inert thought is not illumined by consciousness, it is called ignorance. Conditioned by these two limiting conditions, the pot is referred to present or absent. So here he is talking about before the thought arises, that there is an absence of the pot knowledge, and that is ignorance. Ignorance is not specific of the pot only, but here he is referring to pot. And a little problem here, because when I say that pot is not there, then it is a vritti jnanam, because vritti jnanam being illumined by any time a vritti means a thought arises, it is being illumined by the consciousness called chidabhasa. So by reflected consciousness. If there is no thought, then it is illumined by the if there is no thought, then it is ignorance. Ignorance of, because any vritti is of the object, if there is no thoughts of anything, then it is pure ignorance, and the pure ignorance is being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So the absence of the pot, along with other absence of all objects, is being illumined by pure consciousness, and the presence of the pot is a specific vritti, is being illumined by Chidabhasa. So presence and absence. Absence is also a jnanam, provided because I do not know, is also that I know that I do not know, is also a jnanam, and that is also being illumined also. So vritti jnanam, ajnanam, we are referring to presence or absence of the pot knowledge. And here he claims that the absence of the pot is also a knowledge here. This is the pot is the presence and absence of the pot in terms of the knowledge is being illuminated, one by the Chidabhasa and another by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So he's going to differentiate now in all these things. Number 7. Ajñāto brahmana bhasyo ajñāto brahmano bhasyaha jñātah kumbhastatha Tathanakim jnatah kumbhastatanakim ajñāto brahmano bhyasaha jnatah kumbhastatanakim jñātatva janani naiva jñātatva janani naiva chidabhasa parikshayaha together ajñāto brahmana bhyasyo jnatah kumbhastatanakim jnātatva janani naiva chidabhasa parikshayaha ajñāta kumbha. So ajñāta of kumbha, not ajñāta kumbha. So it is not a kumbha, is ajñāta. So ajñātaha kumbha, the knowledge of the absence of the pot, brahmana bhasyaha, is illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam, Brahma Chaitanyam. Tata, similarly, jnataha, knowledge of the presence of the pot, kimna, why not? So if you say that here is a question by a student, if you say there are two things that have been pointed out, because these should be clear. One is when I say a pot thought arises and is being illumined by Chidabhasa. That was a statement. And before the pot thought arises, there is a mind without the pot thought, and that absence of the pot is being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Now, if the absence of the thought is being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam, Brahma Chaitanyam, why not even the other one also being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam? Why are you bringing a Chidabhasa here? That is the question that is being posed by the student here. So you say you have a reflection. You have a reflection by which knowledge occurs of the Chidabhasa, and without the reflection there is the mind. So why you need to bring Chidabhasa? He is going to explain it in his own way here. So the question here, we have to understand the question here. Ajñāto brahmano bhyaso. So brahmana bhyasyaha. So brahmana bhyasaha. So ajñātaha kumbha. So ajñātaha kumbha, the absence of the pot, and the knowledge of the absence of the pot. Brahmana bhasya, if you say it is illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So in the case of a wall, if there is no mirror reflections, you have a general wall. That was how we started, right? So we have a general wall, and that's being illumined by the sunlight. So what is illumining the sunlight, the wall? It is Kutastha Chaitanyam, that is illumined by the sunlight, general sunlight. And there are specific thoughts which are illumined by the mirrors. We are talking about mirrors and reflecting on the wall. So there is a spotlights, and spotlights are due to Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa is coming from mirrors are being illumined, and the light falling on the mirror is reflected and called Chidabhasa. So reflected light from the mirror is falling on the wall. So now you can see the analogy. So when you say reflected light is falling on the wall, so why don't you say the Brahma Chaitanyam is also illumining the knowledge of the pot also, vritti directly being instead of through Chidabhasa? Why do you need that? That was a question here. Actually, one should be clear here. What is there is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is all the time there. And if there is a mind without the thought, that's a wall without any the spotlights, it is being illumined all the time. And on top of it now, on top means I have that background already. So background Brahma Chaitanya is always there. So even in the Vritti Jnanam, I have the Brahma Chaitanyam plus you have Chidabhasa also. That's what he is going to discuss later. But if we understand this clearly, in the wall example, there is a wall, and wall is being all the time illumined by the sky in the sun in the sky, and therefore there is a general, and that's called Brahma Chaitanyam. I have a mind without a thought and being illumined by the pure consciousness, and that we are calling it as Kutastha Chaitanyam, reflected by the consciousness, is known by the pure consciousness. Now the particular thoughts are raising, or hot spots are raising by the mirror reflections. So it's the reflected light that I am seeing when I say it is the reflected light, Chidabhasa, of the thought I am seeing. The question is, why don't you say it is Brahma Chaitanyam? Brahma Chaitanyam is there also, but that is no particular in that. There is no specificity in that, and therefore you cannot say it. You have a specific spotlight, therefore Chidabhasa has to be brought in. Therefore reflected mirror reflection has to be brought in. Even though there is a bright background light is there from the sun, I am seeing that. On top of it, I am seeing this also. Since my attention is on top of the spotlight, the attention on the vritti, attention on the pot, therefore I say it is by the reflected consciousness, even though background consciousness is still there. So I have Brahma Chaitanyam plus Chidabhasa plus the vritti, all three are there in the process, have to be understood. So if this is clear, then everything becomes follow, although he is staying one at a time. So the question is essentially, how can you say, why don't you say pure consciousness is illumining the whole thing instead of bringing Chidabhasa? This is there is a difference here. Jnatattva janani naiva. We are talking about 8. Jnatattva janani naiva Chidabhasa parichayaha. Chidabhasa parichayaha. So that's what on the mantra 7 itself. So the Jnatattva Janani Nayo Chidabhasa Parishaya, because Chidabhasa is responsible for the creating the ownership of the knowledge. After the ownership, the owner and the object of the knowledge disappear, but the knowledge remains. So here the Jnatattva Janani Naiva Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So when the thought rises in the mind, here is a explanation here. The second line we skipped it. Jnatattva Janani Naiva Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So Chidabhasa Parichayaha. So the Chidabhasa is appears only when the thought arises. When the thought disappears, then what happens? The knowledge that I know remains there in the mind, and that will be stored in the memory as I saw the pot, and I know the pot, or this is the pot. If it is a continuously process, if the pot is still there and I'm seeing all the time, there is a statement that in the Vedanta Paribhasha, I have constant knowledge of this is the pot, this is the pot, this is the pot. Or you cannot say the vritti remains a thought. If the thought is only a particular perturbation, they have series of particular perturbations. They are fast enough that it is continuous. So I have a continuous perception of the pot, and I don't need to bring the continuity. I can have a constant perception of the same thing that I have, because pot is there. As long as I am seeing it continuously, information is coming in, then I can say the thought is, I don't have to dismiss the thought. Here they are talking about in a Vedantic way, says every thought is being illumined, next thought is being illumined, third thought is being illumined. So a notion that there is a continuity of the thoughts is coming because there is a continuous perception of the pot. If the pot comes and goes somewhere and somebody removes it, then I have a memory. But how does the memory come? The knowledge that I saw, so knowership is still there even when the Chidabhasa Parichayaha, when the Chidabhasa is dissolved. Where does it go? The vritti goes back and the thought rises in the mind, thought disappears into the mind only. Therefore Chidabhasa also goes back into Brahma Chaitanyam. So here it says Jnatattvam, the knowership of course remains in the mind, and the knowership again is stored into information as a memory, as a bank. Then there is a memory bank also comes into picture. That's called the part of the antahkaranam. So you have the buddhi, mind, and ahankara and chitta. Chitta means here is ahankara, memory, that which information is there stored from the memory, which I gather back, and every time when I remember, it's coming from the knowledge, is coming from the memory only. So here memory of the knowership. I know this is a part, and the knowledge is now stored and in information wise. Hey, do you know the chemistry? Yes, I studied chemistry. I know chemistry. How do you say that? It's not that I am seeing some chemistry right now. I am recollecting the information from the brain that was stored in the chitta. I am bringing in, and when you ask me what's the formula of water, this is what is that from the memory. It's a H2O, is a water. How did that H2O thought arises? Because I am communicating that thought in terms of the words now, a transformation of the subtle to through expression through the gross, the body, through again into forms of sabda, and that's what essentially more grossification of very subtle things also, and that is being known by when you hear it, you transform again into another thought process. So all these things are involved in some form. So when I'm recollecting information, I'm recollecting from the information of my, and I claim I am the knower of that. So whenever I say I know it, that means I am bringing from the memory. So knowership is coming, and that's because of the previous reflection. Chidabhasa is activating, and that becomes a knowledge. That is what is there. So Jnatattva Janani, in order to have the birth of the knowership, Jnatattva Janani na eva chidabhasa parichayaha. So jananena eva chidabhasa parichayaha. So because chidabhasa is responsible for creating the ownership of the knowledge, after the ownership the owner and the object of the knowledge disappear, but the knowledge remains. Here he is says what remains is then Prama remains, that I can recollect again. Then the recollector is same as the one who is a knower. So how do I know? So because I knew, therefore the I am the knower and I am the recollector. That I am is behind is all the time is there. That Jiva is still there. That who owns to the Jiva, ownership is there, but ownership of it is stored in the mind itself as a part. So once ownership of I know this is part, and that knowledge Chidabhasa is disappears. He says, knowledge is then said to be illumined by Kutastha Chaitanyam. That knowledge is being illuminated by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Therefore, with the knower, knowledge cannot take place without the ownership by the Chidabhasa, and that's called Phalavyapti. So what is the Phalavyapti? An ownership of the knowledge of this is the pot. I know this is a pot. I know this is a chair. That is called Phalavyapti. In all Vritti Jnanam, there is a Phalavyapti involved, because Vritti Jnanam eliminates through a pramana the ignorance of the object. Now I say, hey, I don't know what is a pot. And see the people showing it, hey, this is a pot. Oh my God, this is a pot. I know what is a pot. So I have the knowledge of this is a pot, and now attributive content of that. Now I know that means I am a owner of the knowledge that this is a pot. That is called Phalavyapti. That's called, there is an immediate result, that knowledge of particular things happening, and that's what is called the all Tula Vidya. Tula Vidya means the ignorance of any particular objects is called Tula Vidya, and ignorance of my own self is called Mula Vidya. So Tula Vidya means the ignorance of any object, and the ignorance of any object is removed through a pramana, a means of knowledge. Pramana is the uncovering the ignorance, so that revealing the object, and the pramana here is seeing, is a means of knowledge for pot that is out there. So for Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha are particular pramanas for each one of the particular fields of the senses. So for eyes, colors and forms, eyes are the pramana. For hearing something, ears, the faculty of hearing, not the golakam. Golakam is the instrument. We're not talking about golakam here, because I can have ears but I may not hear. So that's what happens also with the age. And therefore, it's not the golakam we are talking about, it's a faculty of hearing, faculty of seeing, faculty of tasting. So if we lose the taste buds, we may not have the faculty of tasting, even though I have a tongue, because my taste buds are not working. So faculty is a subtle faculty with the mind has to be there behind it, and that is called antahkaranam. And therefore, the sense faculties are with this storage with the mind. And according to Vedanta, there is a presiding deities for each one of them. It's a deity for hearing, deity for each one of them anyway. So Jnatattva Janani Naiva. So here the ownership by the Chidabhasa is called Phalavyapti. So in every Tula Avidya, that's what we're discussing, Tula Vidya can only takes place by illumination through a pramana. Pramana is Pramakaranam Pramanam, that which gives you the knowledge. So knowledge is the phalam, is the result. Result is knowledge involves this is a pot, and also I know this is a pot. That comes from the Kutastha Chaitanyam. This is the knowledge comes from the Chidabhasa, and therefore Kutastha Chaitanyam illumines the ownership of of Tula Vidya. That's what it is. Ownership is by the Chidabhasa is called Phalavyapti. Without the ownership, knowledge cannot take place. So ownership, I know this is a pot that is being illuminated by Kutastha Chaitanyam, but this is a pot coming from the Chidabhasa. That should be clear here. So without Chidabhasa, there cannot be any jnanam, and that's what is going to be discussed in the next sloka, number 8. Abhasahanayo buddhya Abhasahanayo buddhya Jnatattvam naiva janyate Jnatattvam naiva janyate Tradruk buddhir viseshaha kaha tradruk buddhir visheshaha kaha mrudadeshyat vikarinaha mrudadeshyat vikarinaha. Together, abhasahanaya buddhya jnatattvam naiva janyate traduk buddhir visheshaha kaha mrudadeshyat vikarinaha. So abhasahinaya buddhya. Buddhya means here the abhasahina, without having the reflection of the consciousness, reflected consciousness, the buddhi. The buddhya means in the buddhi, in the intellect. Without if a vritti raises, if there is no reflection of that, then there cannot be any knowledge. That's what he's saying. Abhasahinaya buddhya, the thought without the reflected consciousness. Here buddhya is using a thought raising in the mind, in the intellect. That's what in the intellect, thought raises. That's why knowledge takes place through the buddhi. So therefore, abhasahinaya, without the reflection of the consciousness or illumining the thought without a reflected consciousness, jnatattvam na eva bhajanate. So knowledge cannot take place without the reflected consciousness. Tadruk. So of that, buddhi, intellect by itself, without chidabhasa, vikaranaha mrud adehe. It is just like a mud pot. Not mud pot. Mrud adehe. The inert objects like mud, gold, anything else. Because in the Chandogya, you talk about three examples. One is the lohamicheva satyam, the gold and the mud and the iron. So three examples, and here talking about Adav means any of those examples, also anything, any matter. So here it says without the reflection of the consciousness in the thought, there cannot be any knowledge, and a buddhi without reflected consciousness is nothing but just inert material. So we have a pure buddhi, means it becomes a brain without anything. It is just a matter only. So it is a matter, a buddhi, you call it only when it can think. If cannot think, then it is not it is just a brain. A dead brain cannot think. Only a live brain can think. And human brain, because of buddhi, means he has a discriminative thinking also is there, because he is a man. If he is not using the buddhi, then he is as good as an animal also. So ahara nidra bhayamaitu mancha samanyam etas pashubhid naranam buddhirhi tesha adhiko vishesha buddhya vihina pasubhis samanaha. So aharam, food, nidra, sleep, ahara nidra midhuna. I forgot just now, I quoted. Ahara nidra vayamaitanancha samanyameta pasubhidnaranam buddhirhitisha. So they are all common for a human being as well as animals. So animals also can produce, animals also can eat, also can sleep. Ahara nidra bhayamaitunancha. Bhayam, fear, and maitunam is producing the children or prodigy. All are common for an animal as well as the human being. So what's the difference between a human being and an animal? Buddhi tesha adhiko vishesha. So buddhi is a plus point for the human being. Buddhi is a discriminative intellect. What is right, what is wrong, that is the buddhi. And also what is this and what is that. Information, knowledge is also buddhi point. Is discrimination of knowing this compared to others is what is the knowledge is. So that buddhi tesha adhiko vishesha buddhya vihina pasubhi samana. If he doesn't use the buddhi and doesn't have it, he has it but he is not using it, and it is equal to animals. Buddhya vihina pasubhi samana. Animals don't have it, they cannot use it. But here human being has it but he is not using it. Therefore, he is worse than an animal also. So this is the abhasa Hinaya buddhihi jnatatvam naiva janyate. Without the reflected consciousness, without reflection of by the Chidabhasa of the vritti, means reflection is called Chidabhasa. Mind, thought reflection is also Chidabhasa. Is not there, then there is no knowledge takes place, and then it is the mind. Even if there is a thought in the mind, there cannot be a thought, of course. Even if the mind without reflection, it is just like inert things. Without consciousness getting reflected, it is like a moon without sunlight illumining. If the sunlight is not illumining, it is a just dark body only. Because it's a luminous body in the sky, only because sunlight is reflecting. The luminosity exhibited by the moon is due to Chidabhasa, reflected light. Reflected is like a Chidabhasa. So reflected knowledge that I am exhibiting is because of constantly the particular thought is being illumined by the pure consciousness. Without the reflection of the vritti, there is no knowledge takes place and nothing else takes place. Because if there is no buddhi is not reflected, buddhi is a dead matter, and the body is, there is a brain, it becomes called brain only, a gross matter without the subtle. Subtle is there always reflection. So you don't call it anymore buddhi, you call it only a brain. Brain is different from buddhi. Brain is a material which is essentially involves cells, and the brain is there even in a dead body also, but that's not functioning. Functioning comes because of Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. Consciousness can only be reflected when there is a subtle mind also. What happened to the dead body? Dead body is the subtle mind, buddhi, antakarana left that body, leaving the dead cells only. So buddhi is there, intellect is, the dead matter is there, but buddhi we call it only a subtle material which has left. So as long as subtle material is there, reflection will automatically occur. But here a hypothetical case is being discussed. If there is a brain and it doesn't have a reflection, the brain is almost like a dead. So dead body is there, and it will be just like any matter. In fact, it is worse than the matter because it starts stinking rapidly. Therefore, it has to be disposed of quickly. So abhasa hinaya buddhya jnatatvam naiva janyate taduk buddhehi visheshaha kaha visheshaha syat mudedehe vikaranaha. So the jnatatvam eva bhasya tadruk of that buddhehi, the intellect without, that means brain without the Chidabhasa, because as long as the intellect is subtle, as long as intellect is there, it will reflect. So we are talking about non-reflecting intellect. Non-reflecting intellect cannot exist other than the brain itself. So buddhehe without reflection is only gross matter. So it becomes vikaranaha mrud adehe. It is similar to the mud, etc. Kaha visheshaha syat. What will be any specificity with this buddhi, and which is being inert without itself Chidabhasa? So it is essentially wonder what is there, what is the difference? There is no difference. Kaha vishesha means no vishesha. The rhetorical question. So what is speciality about this? There is nothing special. It is only made up of only little polished material. So it came from the annam, it is sustained by annam, it goes back into annam, it gets deteriorated into another annam for somebody else, and that's what he is saying. So without Chidabhasa there is no life itself, and life involves activities. Activities involve the Chidabhasa and the mind and so on and so forth. This is further illustrated in the next sloka. Jnata ityuchyate kumbho Jnata ityuchyate kumbho kumbhaha mrudalipto na kutrachitu dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya jnatatvam neshyate tatha Together, jnata ityuchyate kumbhaha mrudalipto na kutrachitu dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya jnatattvam nishyate tadha. Kutrachit means kutrachit, anywhere. So anywhere, mrudalipta kumbha. So mrudalipta, a pot which is just painted like a, suppose it means it's not possible. Suppose I have a painting of with the mud. I have painted a mud. I may have only paint picture only maybe. So mrudalipta kumbha, a pot smeared by the mud, is a thought experiment here. And jnata iti na uchyate, it's not considered as a known. I do not say I know a pot, so I know a picture of the pot maybe, but I do not say I know a pot by merely smearing the mud on top of in the shape of a pot. So if it does that, dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya, so the dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya, only a thought that is raising in the mind without being illumined by the consciousness, then it is nothing but like a mud. You don't call it any more knowledge at all. That's what he says. So dhimatra vyapta kumbhasya, a part enveloping in the thought without the light of consciousness. Jnatattvam naishyati. So knowledge is not possible. Just as I don't say this is a pot just because something is smeared on top of it, on a shape form. I don't call it a pot. Just as a thought in the form, a vritti in that will not be called as the knowledge of the pot without Chidabhasa reflecting. Consciousness has to reflect. The other one is inert. Inert things cannot know. Inert things cannot be known also. And for that I need a conscious entity, and that's being pointed out here. And that's for Chidabhasa is essential for the knowledge of this. So every thought that arises is a vritti, will automatically illumine by the consciousness which is called, and the reflection of the consciousness will occur, and that's called the knowledge of the pot. But along with the knowledge, spontaneously, I know this is a pot, spontaneously arises, and that ownership or the knowerness arises spontaneously in the background, and that is illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanya. So we are talking about the role of Kutastha Chaitanya and Chidabhasa in every knowledge that is taking place. And we go through this: what is the meditation, what is the nididhyasana, what is the samadhi, all those things need to be clear here, because he's specifying step by step each process, and the knowledge also, how the knowledge arises. Knowledge of Thula Vidya, knowledge of a particular objective knowledge is being analyzed here. We'll stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.